What's up, guys? Today we're going to cover Unit 3, Unit 3, National Income and Price Determination, Topic 3.7, which is Long-Run Self-Adjustment. In this video, we're going to cover flexible wages and prices and economic growth. Okay, just a reminder of what the difference between long-run and short-run is. This is not a time thing. It's short-run is when wages and resource prices are sticky. Resource prices are sticky and will not change when price levels change. So if you change price levels, the resource prices and your wages are going to stay the same, right? They're not going to change. Now, in the long run, they become flexible, and by flexible, when you change price levels, your wages and your resource prices will change as well. So if price levels were to increase in the long run, you should see your wages increase as well. Okay. Now let's look at an example of what happens to aggregate supply and aggregate demand when we see a shift in both. So let's imagine that we have an ADAS model in long-run equilibrium. Now, if we're to see an increase, right? If we're to see an increase in aggregate demand, right? In aggregate demand, then we would shift, in consumer spending, we'd see an increase in aggregate demand. So that would shift, of course, aggregate demand to the right as an increase. Now, what happens in the long run? Well, in the long run, what's going to eventually happen is that prices and resource prices will increase. And by that happening, what's going to happen is when prices and resource prices increase, your aggregate supply curve is then going to shift. And it would shift, that would decrease your aggregate supply, shifting it back towards long-run aggregate supply, right? And so now you are at this point up here, right? So this was our original equilibrium point. This was our second first one, and then this is our second one, okay? And so you can see that right there, that price levels will increase and then again increase as well. So, now, if consumer spending increases, what will happen in the long run and what's going to happen in the short run? So in the long run, wages and costs will increase, right? And if, so now let's look at it the other way, right? What happens if consumer spending were to decrease, right? Well, then we'd see a shift from aggregate demand to the left, right? And then again, wages and resource prices would decrease, shifting our aggregate supply to the right. So just the reverse of this, obviously, okay? Now, if we see an increase in investment, right? An increase in investment means that there's going to be an increase in capital stock, right? And remember that capital stock is machineries and tools purchases by businesses to increase their output. So if you see an increase in investment, that in the long run is going to push our long-run aggregate supply curve out, right? And so let me give you an example. So if we've got here our LRAS, our ADAS model, right? And so if I increases, right, that's going to shift AD out, right? And then because of that, you'd also shift your AS curve, right? And then you would shift your long-run aggregate supply curve, right? Now, why are you shifting your long-run aggregate supply curve? You're shifting your long-run aggregate supply curve because now you're able to produce more than you were able to before, right? Think of it as machinery, right? So automation. So now, because of automation, you're able to make more things. You're pushing out your long-run aggregate supply curve, right? And so that would be a shift for our long-run aggregate supply curve. And just a reminder, or just kind of a heads up, an increase in consumption or government spending doesn't cause economic growth, right? The only thing that's going to cause economic growth or moving your long-run aggregate supply curve to shift, right, is in the ADA, or I'm sorry, in the aggregate demand equation or the GDP equation is going to be I, right? So consumer spending and government spending does not shift I. The only thing that's going to shift, shift your long-run aggregate supply. The only thing that's going to shift it is I. Okay, and then that's going to be it for topic 3.7. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good one.